What is going on, everybody? This is Mike from the Last Corvette. So this video is about horsepower and a dollar amount attached to 1 horsepower. So basically cost of horsepower. Now, I've seen so many different arguments in person, on forums, whatever, right? About, true value of 1 horsepower. Now, horsepower is expensive, and I did a video a few years back explaining just the cost per horsepower, right? But I wanted to give you guys a clear view and give you guys a perfect example of what a 60 horsepower gain will cost you, even if you do the work yourself. So as I stated before, this is plus or minus $10. Usually it's a plus. But if you buy the performance parts yourself and you do the install yourself and then you count in tuning, that's usually $50 per 1 horsepower. If you take it to a performance shop of your choice that specializes in your product and in your vehicle, that comes out to $100 per horsepower. Pretty easy math. And of course, the reason it's double is because of labor, right? Labor is not cheap. Labor is very intense, as I call most, we'll say applications that require engine modifications. They're very labor intensive and they take time. So yes, you double that price. So anyway, let me give you a perfect example of a $50 per horsepower equation or simple math. If you go to Texas Speed website, and I use Texas Speed product, but you don't need to use Texas Speed. Texas Speed just has a really good website. Not only they lay out all of the products that you actually need on top of just buying a cam package, because cam packages, and the reason I'm bringing up a cam package, is probably one of the most popular items to add to the vehicle once you kind of went through maybe the first 2 phases of upgrades, like exhaust, intake, and all that stuff, right? That's the easiest way and the quickest way and the cheapest way, believe it or not, to juice up your engine, raise your horsepower, and just basically wake up your vehicle. So if you go to their website, if you're unsure of what you need, just call them. They have probably one of the greatest tech supports. They don't try to push anything. They just tell you what it is. You give them the spec, you give them your end result, for example, or current mods, and they'll tell you, this is what you need, regardless if you have an automatic or a manual transmission vehicle. So a normal cam package, includes a cam, push rods, for LS anyway, springs, retainers, stuff like that, right? And most people just get that. Now, Texas Speed is smart, and like I said, they're not making you purchase extra stuff, but they're giving you options like an oil pump, timing chain, sprockets, crank bolts, stuff like that, right? All of the things you're going to be removing and all the things that technically should be replaced if you want to do things right. That's why if you take it to a professional performance shop, they'll replace all those things. They'll tell you up front that if you don't do this, A, B, and C, you might have to come back to us to get more work done because certain things will fail. So in a nutshell, on the Texas Speed website, if you have an LS application, if you buy a cam, if you buy, timing chain, sprocket, you'll buy a crank bolt and an oil pump, you'll be right around, we'll just say $1,300. I'm just going to keep it very simple, $1,300 or something like that, right? And, you're not done because you still need a water pump. And a water pump is another $300. So you're at $1,600, right there. One other thing you need to replace, specifically on a stock vehicle or a vehicle that has never been modified, or you have, original parts for, say, not parts that you've replaced recently. Like if you have a brand new water pump or a water pump from a year or 2 years ago, you're probably fine. But, people always argue about the year, the miles. Let me just be clear. Even if you have a low mileage C6 Corvette, the last production year was 2013. So that vehicle is 11 years of age. And components age with low mileage, with use, regardless, they will give out. And the last thing you want to do is invest your time and money, as I've stated many, many times before in my videos, and then have to basically take apart the engine because you wanted to take a shortcut. So you buy a water pump, $1,600. A balancer or a crank pulley, if you go stock or middle of the road, like ATI will run you about 500 bucks. Probably one of the best balancers for not just LS applications. They make a really good product. And we'll just say another $300. So now you're up to $1,900. You're not done. You're going to need fluids. You're going to need gaskets and seals and whatever else breaks along the road while you're doing disassembly and install, right? Or whatever else you find in between that needs to be replaced, like a thermostat is another one. So, the way I look at it is this: by the time you're all in, and that's you buying the parts, you're probably going to be easily right around the $2,300 mark, which doesn't sound like a lot of money, but you're also looking at only like a 60 horsepower gain, right? So you're not done. You're going to go through and you're going to do the right thing. You're going to replace all the components. So you remove all the wear or perishable components and you're going to replace them. And then guess what you need to do? You need to tune your vehicle. At $2,300, we'll just say a normal tune is right around $700 to $800. So we'll say $700. So now you're at $3,000. And I'm just being very like minimal, just down and dirty math. $3,000 to buy a cam, replace the components, and then tune your vehicle, obviously. So you actually get, returns on your investment. So $3,000 over 60 horsepower is right around $50 per horsepower. If you were to take a vehicle to a performance shop, you would be double that, because whatever the parts are usually is, that's what your labor is. Pretty much every business works like that, right? If you buy $20,000 of material, you're probably going to be close to $40,000 in labor to install that material or do something with it. So yeah, $50 do it yourself per horsepower, $100 if somebody else does it. It's expensive. It gets very expensive. And that's why I always preach, if you're going to go through the trouble of building up your engine, building up your vehicle, do yourself a favor, specifically when it comes to tuning, right? So anything that requires a tune, go through, save up your money, and do it one shot. Either you're going to do it or you're going to have somebody else do it. And the tuning alone, so, for example, you get headers in a cold air intake. You need a tune. You do more modifications. You switch to ethanol. You need a tune. And, every time you go, it's $700, $800, sometimes $1,000 a pop. For example, this C6 Corvette, I pay about $900 for a tune because I have to come back twice. Every time I tune that vehicle, I have to tune on 93 pump, and I also have to tune it on E85. So, they don't charge me, $1,800, but it's about $800 to $900. And then, I have to make basically 2 trips to the tuner. Luckily, one of the greatest tuners is about 3 miles away from my house. They tune for K-Tech, Dupson Performance, great guys over there. Dr. Phil is the tuner. Big difference when you find the right tuner and you stick with them because your vehicle just wakes up. But anyway, at the end of the day, yes, horsepower is expensive, even if you do it yourself. And if you do it yourself, take my advice and buy all the right components. Number one, that fits your future, vision, or at least fits the vehicle, right? So you're not going to, pour money into a vehicle and then realize that either A, you bought the wrong components, like a cam that's made for boost, for example, not for naturally aspirated. And that's why it's always easier to, if you don't know, call a performance shop, call Texas Speed, call K-Tech if you're in the area, or even if you live outside of Michigan, they'll tell you exactly what's needed. But the biggest difference between K-Tech, and if you guys don't know K-Tech, K-Tech is very similar to Texas Speed. They make their engines, they develop engines for GM, they sell products, blah, 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 blah. But Texas Speed is more of a retail store than anything. K-Tech is more of a, we'll do it for you. So when it comes to simple questions, they'll answer. When it comes to more specific questions, it's just better to call Texas Speed because they're selling their products, in masses versus K-Tech. They'll say, well, bring it in, we'll do the work, right? And another thing too, before I close out this video is, certain components like a cold air intake or a couple other, performance mods, headers maybe, most performance shops will accept your parts and install them. When it comes to like heads, cam, and other various components, if you bring them those parts, more than likely they're not going to install them because there's liability, warranty issues, and stuff like that. They normally like to use their own products, and specifically if you deal with a shop that specializes in your vehicle or your make and model, they know exactly what works and what doesn't, and that is the key. Never just throw parts at it like, I'm going to buy this cam or I'm going to buy these heads. Always do your research. Always ask the experts, and if you don't know the answer, take the vehicle to the experts.